Gaming and gamers get a bad press. Legacy media has a dim view of the industry and its many communities, or rather not seeing the many communities. The prevailing narrative being the hobby is silly, childish, irrelevant, and generally bad. Many social ills have been laid at the feet of gaming and gamers, marking it as bad for society. The pastime has been deemed so detrimental that a new psychiatric category has been created, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, DSM-5, lists video game addiction as a unique disorder. But are gamers and gaming uniquely bad? Do we really deserve this reputation? Hey, I'm Fornex. Welcome to my channel, and let's see if we can get to the bottom of this. There are links below for all the sources and articles and information I cite here. Who are the gamers? The average gamer is often portrayed as a basement-dwelling, unwashed NEET. That's a person who's not in education, employment, or training. He, not they or she, but he is depicted as a socially isolated, often disaffected young man, an underachiever who is terminally online, having been either blue or red-pilled respectively. You can think of this as the Asmongold archetype. Although the man himself is a wildly successful streamer and millionaire, that is the aesthetic, the kind of vibe depicted. There are often more serious charges laid at the feet of this category, or rather caricature of gamers, those being racism, misogyny, homophobia, and the like. But how accurate is this depiction? Worldwide, there were over 3.2 billion gamers in 2023. Currently, there are around 8.3 billion human beings on the planet, so that's around 37% of the global population. From 2022 to 2023, the number of gamers rose from 2.7 to 3.23 billion, an increase of 5.6%, so you can safely say that gaming is a growing pastime. In the US in 2022, 70% of adults reported playing games on their phone. Game snobbery aside as to whether you think phone gaming is gaming, over 50% of Europeans play video games. Almost 79% of all internet users regularly engage in gaming activities. Worldwide, the average age of gamers is between 35 and 44, with 48% of American gamers being female. Globally, the male-to-female gamer ratio is close to 50-50. Asia is the biggest gaming market, with 1.6 billion video game players. Now, the demographics within the numerous disparate gaming niches varies wildly. For example, a larger percentage of US men play first-person shooters, around 80% of that cohort. Women, on the other hand, see their highest population percentages in immersive narrative RPGs, mobile, and puzzle-type games. The Sims has a gender ratio of 45.37% male, 52.42% female, and 1.32% non-binary. When it comes to esport audiences, it is still predominantly male. In 2018, 80% of esports audiences were male. In 2019, 35% of esports players were female, and 30% of esports audience the same year were women. In September 2023, Twitch, with its community of over 140 million gamers, of whom I am a part, 63% were men and 37% were women. These viewership figures align with streamer ratios, with around 35% of Twitch streamers being female. So, having gone through the data, a vastly different landscape is revealed to that which has been popularized and perpetuated online and in traditional media. It's almost as if, perhaps, making definitive derogatory moral judgments about billions of people, approximately 37% of humanity, might be a wee bit silly. Gamers are not a monolith. We are as diverse as the numbers suggest. That said, when any cohort is large enough, there will be the good, the bad, and the ugly of humanity present. Often the largest asshats shout the loudest, and for gamers, those discordant fringe voices seem to be the ones amplified and echoed. In the market of attention, negativity finds more eyes, more engagement, and therefore more monetization, giving it more legs. The good news stories are buried. The millions raised for charities each year by organisations like Gaming for Good and Extra Life simply do not register outside the community. The good is drowned out by some edgelord on Twitter trying to win bigot bingo. I would dearly like to lay to rest the notion and nonsense of the all-gamer trope. People who play games are just that, people. Another volley shot across the good ship gamer is waste. Gaming is a waste of time and money, and I would ask how far down the rabbit hole of utility this mindset would like to go. Should we only spend money on the things that we need to survive, to subsist? What's the going rate on happiness? What percentage are we allowed to allocate to the silly joys of our lives? Is this practice of utility and notions of wastefulness a first principle? Is it applied equally across society? Let's set the scene, shall we? Set up another scenario. Say I'm an avid reader. I spend countless hours, almost every free moment I have, with my head in a book. Le Guin, Tolkien, McCaffrey, Silverberg, Asimov and Atwood. These are the literary gods at whose altar I worship daily. I have everything they've ever written, even the unfinished tales. Well, that's true. There are a few first editions in my home library. That would be a pretty penny spent. I've travelled across the globe for an Atwood reading. Do you think the person I just characterised is wasting their time and money? Do you think that society, legacy media, even the trolls on Twitter would bother to judge them? What about someone who loves golf? That's a time and money sink if ever there was one. Or American football. Or maybe your hobby is music, or RC, or you're an avid F1 follower. Do you think these hobbies, pastimes, interests, whatever you want to label them, do you think that they're subject to the same rigour as gaming and gamers, or rather biases as gaming and gamers? I would argue not, but please do share your thoughts and examples in the comments below. So for me, the question is, why the disparity? And my answer is not based on figures or statistics. It's formed from personal observations and thoughts, and therefore, well, worth very little, really, but here it is. I think part of it is gaming not being a monolith. There are high-minded narrative experiences, spiritually uplifting exploration and adventure games, alongside first-person shooters, races, sims, and whatever the hell Fall Guys is. It's a broad church that cannot be arbitrarily labelled and defined. The demographics of gaming also play their part. Although there are many gamers over 50, the lion's share of players are under 30, a demographic that has, in equal measure, been overlooked, underserved, and ridiculed by mainstream media and, well, policymakers alike. And despite the fact that computer gaming was born in October 1958, sprung from the mind of the physicist William Higginbotham, despite the first mainstream gaming arriving in the 1970s, despite the fact that the gaming industry makes more money, 3 times more money than the music industry, and 4 times as much money as the movie industry, as Hollywood, with the global gaming market being valued at $245.9 billion in 2022. That number being projected to reach $682 billion by 2030, a compound annual growth rate of 13.6% between 2023 and 2030. Despite these jaw-dropping figures, gaming is still somehow inexplicably seen as new and trivial and juvenile, and of course a waste of your time and money. And why? It's odd. Humanity has a long and truly pathetic history of othering groups of people. When D&D tabletop gaming became popular in the 1970s and early 80s, it was subjected to some genuinely bad accusations. Honestly, no one in D&D, no one who plays D&D worships devils. You make deals with them, darling. You make deals. In the Northern Hemisphere, the moral panic around gaming is limited to concerns about little Johnny not doing their homework. In Asia, where parents prize educational achievement at a cultural level, matters have, shall we say, escalated. You can find videos and written accounts of young people being dragged off to rehab camps to detox from gaming, viral footage of irate parents destroying consoles and assaulting their children is not uncommon. China, shockingly, took a totalitarian approach, with Beijing cracking down heavily on its video game sector in 2021, legislating strict playtime limits for under 18s and suspending approval for new video games for about 8 months, citing gaming addiction concerns, immediately wiping 80 billion of the market value of China's 2 biggest gaming companies. Unsurprisingly, this crash triggered a more conciliatory tone from the CCP, and China's video game market returned to growth in 2023. Its domestic revenue rose 14% to $42.42 billion, at least according to the Chinese authorities. It's clear to anyone, at least with one firing neuron, that China's desire to implement game time restrictions is pure fantasy. And I cannot stress enough to anyone who thinks assaulting your child is acceptable, you are wrong. Assault is assault, and if you put your hands on a child, you are an immoral piece of shit. Get help, for everybody's sake. All that said, there are many things to find fault with in the gaming industry, from its extractive predatory practices and psychological manipulations directed at consumers. I'm looking at you, gotcha games and mobile games, and most games now. And the horrific abuse of its seemingly disposable workforce, unionize. To the eye-watering salaries gifted to parasitical executives and shareholders, we all need to be supporting indie games. These are the evils which should draw journalistic focus and societal ire, and yet something capitalism bad. Do check out Stephanie Sterling and their work for a deeper dive into the hellscape that is the gaming industry's dark side. The yin and yang of gaming. So I think any pastime which doesn't harm others, but that brings you happiness, is a worthwhile endeavour. Just as our body needs to recover from strenuous activity, so too does our mind. We need respite. We need shelter from the storm to recuperate. Be it gaming, reading, exercise, whatever floats your boat, that has immense value. As a disabled person, I can tell you that gaming was and is a lifeline for me. For many years, I was trapped in a body that offered no comfort. I was trapped in a home that felt more like a prison. The only place I could freely move was online. The only world I got to explore were the ones I found in MMOs and RPGs. And they kept me sane. They brought me back to the world, to the real world. And I found joy again, and friends. And I eventually created this channel. There are millions of people who find solace in gaming because the real world is out of reach for them. I think the therapeutic nature and possibilities of gaming have yet to be fully appreciated and explored. And I have not even touched on how the stories and worlds we explore in games can open our minds to new possibilities. I can honestly say that I am a kinder, more thoughtful, less judgmental person for experiencing the story of Final Fantasy XIV. It has altered how I see the world for the better. Stories can change hearts and minds, and gaming is rich with them as much as a double-edged sword as that can be. However, what happens when a safe place, a safe space, becomes a prison of our own making? When players do disconnect from their lives, effectively disappearing into games and online communities, that is a cause for concern. If you undertake habitually any activity to the detriment of your mental and physical health, that behaviour can be considered an addiction. The common denominator in addictive behaviours is the mental distress of the person undertaking them, and unfortunately, people who are neurodivergent are more susceptible, more vulnerable to these kinds of disorders. There should be robust regimes for players who have harmed themselves via gaming, just like there are prescriptive treatment plans for those who suffer from substance abuse and other forms of physical and mental self-harm. The issue here for me is the double standard. If you play games after work or school, it's a concern. However, if you get home at 6 p.m, plonk yourself in front of the TV for 6+ hours, somehow that's not a problem. That's normal. I would point out that this activity could potentially completely isolate you in your home. You're just sat there, passively watching. No mental engagement required, no thought or action needed. Doing this day in, day out, ad infinitum, however, does not warrant concern nor intervention, and the pages of the DSM remain unchanged. On the other hand, is it fair to even call for parity with something like TV addiction? I think the list of possible disorders would be almost endless. From plastic surgery to sleep, we are capable of weaponizing everything and anything that we do. However, this is a conundrum I leave to the professionals in the field. In the future, I think gaming and interactive experience like it will eclipse passive mediums such as film. Gaming is an immersive form of art in its own right, which is only just beginning to get the cultural acknowledgement it deserves. With this gradual shift, I hope gamers will be seen in a less polarized, more objective light. But that is my thoughts on the matter. If you have enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button. If you want to see more of my videos, please do subscribe, and do let me know your thoughts on the topic below. Many thanks to all those who support me on Patreon and Subscribestar. I could not do this work without you. I am eternally grateful for your support. And if you would like to join their ranks, there are links below in the doobly-doo. But we have come to the end, so until we meet again, please stay safe, stay awesome, and thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.